a very special guest. She is probably the most important person that will ever be on this show because it's my daughter, Elizabeth or Ellie Barnes. You see, I call her MacGyver. Actually, she's, for those of you of a certain age, you guys understand that MacGyver was uh, the the problem solving beast. He could solve any problem. He was put in all these tough situations. He knew how to get himself out of any situation because he was a learner and he understood how things work and he knew how to problem solve, right? And so I'm introducing my daughter as an example, maybe exhibit A of the whole idea of building problem solvers. And so Ellie, thanks for coming on.
Yes, thank you for having me.
So are you nervous about the conversation?
um, I don't know, maybe.
That means yes, but that's okay because only, I don't know, one, two, three people might actually see this, and most of them will probably be related to us. So
So it doesn't
there's no
matter.
stress in that environment. Okay, so Ellie, we're going to talk a little bit. Tell us a little bit about who you are. What makes Ellie tick?
Let's
Tough
see.
question, I know.
What makes me tick?
Let me sharpen the question.
My
Give
heart.
me some of the things that you are up to, some of the things you're doing in your learning journey since you are a self-led, self-driven learner. What does that look like for you?
So, a lot of the times when I explain it to people, I'll say it's kind of a combination of um, so it's me finding things that I'm interested in and trying to learn about them. And I do that kind of in two ways. I take some classes, and then I also do some like experiential work. Um,
Give me an example of experiential work.
yeah, so the one I can think of right now is I'm currently working for my church, and I'm kind of doing marketing and communications and some admin work. And so, just particularly in the communication side, just learning, you know, about website, social media stuff, just basic, you know,
Yeah.
things that you need to know with communication. So,
So what I find interesting, Ellie, is that what you see in the learning is different than what I see in the learning. So what I see in the learning are things like you are now interacting with dozens and dozens and dozens of adults of
mm-hmm,
various ages. You are handling responsibilities that I think most people would say a 16-year-old is incapable of handling, but you grew
mm-hmm,
into it. Right? You weren't
mm-hmm,
born with that skill. You just kind of
yeah,
built it. You're also doing a real job, right? Where you have accountabilities, where you have deadlines, where you have things that you don't know how to do. Um, and so that to me is the part of learning that is uh, 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 always going to be present. Whatever you're doing, you always have to do those things. So those are the things to me that are much more valuable than some of the stuff that you might be seeing. So now, what I would like to do for the folks that are watching, the two or three people who are watching, we're going to bring up something that Ellie and I put together. It is called SelfDirected Whiteboard. How Ellie and I keep track of the things that she's doing on this whiteboard. And as you can see, there's a ton of random pieces on here. But what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in a little bit because if a learner is going to take a larger role in their learning, then that means that they are going to need to have some structure. And here's the place that I have found that a lot of people who talk about self-directed learning, they miss the mark. Um, they let the child just go and go feral. So the child decides when they want to wake up in the morning. They decide if they take a shower. They decide if they're going to eat breakfast or when. Right? That is not at all what I encourage. Um, what I encourage is something a bit more structured, but it's more like a coaching responsibility for the parents. So here is what we did with Ellie. We sat down a couple years ago and we started with a conversation about what are the areas of interest that she had. And this document started with a brainstorm, and then we kept adding over and over again to this document to the point where there were dozens and dozens. In fact, over here is these are other areas that she was interested in that she has now said, I'm not so interested in those areas anymore. These are the areas that she has consistently indicated some interest in. And we've been slowly and methodically identifying some and then building some of them out. So let's start with the one that I actually find most interesting, which is right here. So Ellie, can you talk a little bit about how your learning journey in the theater space began, how you operated it, what did you do to further it, etc.?
Yeah, so let's see. I mean, so to start, I was interested in theater, so we added this to the list. I was originally just interested in like acting, but then we brainstormed all the different parts of theater that there were that could be of interest for me.
Ellie,
And
I just got to pause you real quick because I got to point out this response from Kristen Daniels. You rock, Ellie. Thanks for sharing. So Kristen knows
nice.
who rocks because Kristen rocks. So back to you, Ellie. So continue on with the
Okay.
theater work.
Okay. Anyway, Dad connected me with a lady, and I kind of reached out to her. I guess building my network with people in the theater world. Yes.
Let me interrupt you because you said Dad connected me. I didn't connect you. I gave you an email.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's what. Okay. Dad gave me an email of someone, and I emailed the person, just kind of asking her advice on learning more about theater. And so I was able to get a few opportunities. I did like a show, and then also like crew work. So just learning more about the whole of theater. I think from that network.
Yep.
Um, and then we also added here things like, marketing communications and lighting and those things, which I wasn't necessarily interested in, but they're parts of theater. And me and Dad had talked about if you have multiple skills in the theater world, it it makes it more like
More
you have more value
bingo.
in the
That's
space.
the right language. So let me pause for a couple seconds. For those, two people who are watching this, I want you to hear what just happened. So Ellie entered into this space. I essentially gave her an email of somebody that I knew that was in the theater space. Ellie had to write the email, set up the conversation, have the conversation with this adult, explore. She was actually asking questions of this person, not looking for a job or a gig of any sort. She was trying to understand what it's like to be in the theater, to get in the theater, etc. Long story short, that person invited her to then be a part of a reading, which is, I guess, is that what it's called, Ellie? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
where they essentially read through things, and Ellie prepared for that reading and then delivered it in such a way that this person said, "We need to keep an eye on this person." Then a few months later, what happened, Ellie? Or what did you do? How did you finagle the internship deal?
Well, the internship. Oh, I reached out to the lady and I said I'm looking to learn more about the kind of behind the curtain, you could say, work of theater, and if there were any opportunities that I could learn about that. And she connected me with two other people in the theater um, company that they were in, and I was able to get a little internship as a crew member for a show.
Right. So you were on the show. You were again working with adults
Mm-hmm.
as a peer. You were learning the back offices of the theater world, and
Mm-hmm.
was that a good experience?
Yeah,
Right.
it was
So,
really fun, and I learned a lot. I probably could have learned more, but
well, this
it's
is
fine.
baby steps. What are some of the things that you learned that you think are the most important and the most impactful in your mind?
Well, I was originally going to say like what I learned, but the fact that like networking is kind of the first part of, or a very big part of getting experience and
Mhm. Most adults know that opportunities come with a combination of what you're able to do, your reputation, and who you know. And so if you're in your interactions with this person who I just gave you an email, if you had come across as someone who's flighty or irresponsible, or if you had dropped the ball, then you would have closed that door. You didn't. You followed through. And then when you came back to say, I'd like to learn, then she said, well, how about you learn here? We can put you to work for free. Now, that work happened was it kind of during school hours, wasn't it?
yes.
Yeah. Right. So here's another dynamic. So if you're going to learn about work, but you're in school all day, it's hard to actually learn about the realities of work. And so these opportunities are really out there for folks who are, kind of bucking some of the system. That's kind of what we've done. And so she's now getting opportunities to do things that others may not have had the opportunity to do. Ellie, continue on. Then what happened in January?
The lady who I reached out to, who I had connected with earlier the last year, she just sent me an email saying that there was an audition for a play that they're doing, and she asked if I was interested in auditioning, and I said yes because I was. And then I auditioned and got the part, which was exciting. But
Yep. So part of this here is that now she had the availability because, gosh, how many hours did you put into practicing or rehearsals and then the actual performances as well?
I have no idea how many hours we put into rehearsals. It was 3 weeks, 5 days a week. I can't remember for how many hours.
Yeah.
But then we had like 20 shows. 3 weeks for 5 days a week each.
And then you performed for 4 weeks, 4 days a week, right? Yeah. So again, that would be, I think it would be impossible if you were in a traditional educational environment. I think if a school coming out, going until 10 p.m. many nights. So the point I'm trying to make with this idea of theater as a example of how a learning journey can look, it starts with the child's interests. Then it builds on those interests by helping that child learn how to build her own network and her own skills, so then new opportunities can emerge. We're talking 18 months for this whole process to cycle through. But the ultimate outcome of that was wonderful learning opportunities, an internship, a reading, an actual paid gig, and now she's moving into another space where she's doing an internship into another part of her area of interest, which is costume design, which is right here, costume. So over time, she's ticking off all of these areas of the theater world, and she's starting to realize the parts of theater that she likes, the parts that she doesn't like. How valuable is that for a young person at age 16 to know, I don't want to do X, but I do like doing Y? Most young people wait until they're 22 or 23 to make those decisions. That's a real problem in my view. So talk a little bit about this deal over here. You mentioned you were interested in flight. How does flight and theater relate? That can't be right. Did I misprint that? What is that?
None of the stuff on this board is connected. It's all just random interests that I have. And I can't even remember why I was interested in flight. I just kind of.
So let me describe it. So first off, this is how the human body works, folks. We have varied interests. We are not linear thinkers. Some might have that skill set, but I've met very few of them who do. So years ago, Ellie mentioned that she was interested in flight, airplanes. And if you know Ellie, she's very mild-mannered, so it's really kind of strange that she'd be interested in something that appears somewhat risky. I bought her a book years ago called Stick and Rudder because she mentioned she was interested in flight. She never cracked that, but maybe you cracked it once.
I think I read like 3 pages.
Right. So, and I was like, all right, well, but then I learned about this program called Civil Air Patrol. And so I mentioned it to her. And then all I did was mention it to her. And then, Ellie, what did you have to do?
I looked it up online. I called a lady who Dad, I think, had connected with just to ask her more about it. And then I had to, Nope.
I didn't know that person from Adam. I just knew the program.
Okay. Well, somehow I got a phone number of a lady who works at the program and whose kid is in the program. And I learned more about it. And then I just kind of took the steps to join, I guess.
Mm-hmm. You not only took the steps to join, but you reached out to the individual who was in charge. You asked about the information. You came back to us about the cost because it was actually a very modest cost. We gave approval on the costs. You then figured out where it was. You figured out how are you going to get there. You figured out what you needed to get because you had to get some uniforms and things like that. So I want people to hear this to know that all I did was said, hey, here's something that might be of interest. And then she took the ball. Now, a lot of the families I work with, if they start by saying, here's something of interest, then they do all the work. They call the people, they schedule the appointment, they figure out the travel, all that. That is not at all what self-directed learning is. That's actually enabling a child to not have to learn how to do their own skills and build their own skills. So Ellie learned how to do this. When I then mentioned this as an area of interest, she did the research on it, which I also didn't mention. She researched it first to figure out if it was something of interest. And now, Ellie, are you happy that you were a part of this?
Yes,
She's
very.
loving it, right? You're digging this thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Note by Kristen Daniels again. She says that I've learned over time that networking is critical. Most important is creating a system for recording, organizing your networking notes, which is another conversation we can have another time, and being really good at remembering people's names, faces, and details. Now, that is a great point, Kristen. A lot of people, I will say, think about networking as a negative, kind of a smarmy kind of like thing. For a young person, networking is really all about learning. How do I learn about flight? How do I learn about the theater? How do I learn about other areas, marketing, communications, etc.? That's how Ellie has driven her learning journey. So now she's driving it, and wouldn't you be surprised to know that she's much more engaged, much more interested, and heck of a lot busier than she might normally be. Ellie, especially when you were doing all the theater stuff, tell me a little bit about that. Your day. What did that look like?
Yeah, it was so full. Between I take three classes, so between those three classes, between work, between work for the theater, Civil Air Patrol, it was super busy. Um, but those 3 months were probably the most fun that I've had, like, in a really long time. Now, of course, there are ups and downs. Like yesterday, I was kind of feeling down, but overall,
Don't mention that part.
whoops.
No, it's good, right? That's human life, right? Sometimes things are great, and sometimes things not so much. But during that period of time when you were busy, you were doing acting, you were doing CAP, you were taking 2 courses, you're reading interesting books. That was actually one of the highlights, and I loved hearing you say, "Dad, I've never been busier, but I'm loving it." That to me is the quote that needs to go on my tombstone. Uh, Hopefully not anytime soon. Don't get any ideas, Ellie. So this is what self-directed learning actually can come and look like for a young person, and that's what I'm really advocating for. And again, the last point I'll point out is, Ellie, have we ever talked about this idea of goal, plan, executed, evaluation? Have we ever mentioned that or had that conversation?
Once or twice, maybe.
Okay, so to me, this is the key. What I'm trying to help a self-directed learner know how to do. Actually, Ellie, you describe it. You know this thing. What am I
Okay.
trying to do with this whole idea of
Oh,
goal planning?
to create ways that a person can get things done by themselves, right? So if
That's
you
it.
follow this plan, you can basically do anything, I think.
Right. So, and I will say it a little bit differently. So, if you learn how to problem solve for yourself, if you become a beast at this area, then you actually can move into adulthood without me as your parent being worried, because you will know how to set a goal, how to plan for it, how to execute it, how to evaluate it, how to redo that whole cycle over and over again. And that is what all high functioning adults do. So, Ellie, thank you for being a part of this conversation. Clara, just really giving some props on nice to hear about your experience. And so, Clara, thanks for that. Again, Clara, thank you for your work as a teacher in the trenches. Really appreciate you. And I really appreciate you, Ellie, for trusting me on this weird journey that does not follow a script. It's a lot easier to follow a script, but most young people who follow a script end up feeling like they don't get the opportunity to explore their whole areas of interest. And again, for Ellie, we've got theater, we've got flight, we've got Spanish fluency, not just learning Spanish, but actually a goal to be fluent. We've got computers and networking, we've got health, psychology, personal finance, entrepreneurship, a lot of areas in this space. And again, this is her, self-directed whiteboard, which kind of governs how she operates. So when a young person is excited about learning, they will wake up, they will get work done on their own, They will not have to have a parent yelling at them, asking, "What are you doing?" and "Why are you playing video games?" And that's kind of what I've seen with my daughters, Ellie, also known as one of my MacGyver girls. So, Ellie, thanks for the conversation today. I hope this was not too painful.
Yeah, no, it was fun. Thanks,
Okay,
Dad.
cool, cool. All right, well, guys, thanks for listening. Those that have been a part of the conversation, really appreciate it. Looking forward to further conversations on LinkedIn and plan on doing many more of these LinkedIn Lives over the coming weeks and months. So thanks, Ellie. Great to see you, and I'll see you in a minute.